Well, it's my first proper weekend of the year off. Cooking and carpenter here for 48 hours on Meadow Lake at Cooking Farm. Forecast looks good, low pressure, it's going to rain. It's held off so far, I've managed to get the camp set up. My rods are in. Margot's not quite finished work and got here yet, but she's on her way. There was a couple of fish out last night, a couple of nice 20s actually. The fish in here are all well worth catching. They're all big fish. There's only 120 in here, in about 4.5 acres. Let's hope that they keep us awake all night. Bring them on. Morning. As you can see, it rained fairly hard last night and we're all still here, and I think everyone on the lake's blanking. Never mind. Patience is a virtue. Still hopeful for one.
It's pretty hideous weather here today, and I'm being nagged and nagged for a new cooking video because we haven't done one for ages. So we're going to have a bit of crumpet by the bank today with lashings of butter and some homemade jam. I've got very simply what I need around me here. We've got some strong white flour with some salt in. In here I've got a tablespoon of sugar, which I'm just going to literally pop into this jug. And then all we're going to do is add a tablespoon of quick yeast and half a pint of milk, and we're just going to warm that. The yeast and sugar, half a pint of milk. I'm just going to warm that really gently, and it has to be really gently because if you heat it too much you'll kill the yeast. It looks like that. It's just going to go into here. The purpose of the sugar in with the yeast is it acts like food for the yeast. So in a minute when we put this back in the jug, we'll just leave the whole thing to froth and rise for a little while. Then we'll add it to the flour. But as I said, don't overheat the milk. That's really, really imperative. You need to be about blood temperature. Warm the milk to hand hot, that's about 34 degrees. Don't be tempted to do it any hotter than that because you will kill the yeast. It needs to be body temperature. So I'm simply going to pour the milk, sugar and yeast back into this jug. Now if you had an Aga or a warm spot at home, you would just put that jug in a warm place for about 20 minutes. We're about 6 degrees out here today, so I'm going to be fighting the elements, but we're looking for this to start to froth up in the jug. I'll show you on the next scene. Okay. We've got this pan of warm water that we've sat the yeast in just to try and make it work a little bit. It's now gone frothy, probably not as frothy as you would have at home, but I reckon enough for me to now move into the flour. So that's what we'll do next. In here you'll see I've already weighed off the flour. I'm just going to make a bit of a well in the centre. And then just pour in all of that. It's going to be quite a loose batter. You just need to mix it until there's no lumps left. See, that's nearly thoroughly mixed in. As long as you haven't got any flour lumps in there, then that'll be just fine. The same is going to need to apply now. We're going to have to warm some more water, and I'm going to have to sit this tub with the lid on. We're going to leave it for, well, 3/4 of an hour in your house, probably an hour here today in this temperature, but it shouldn't take too long, and then we'll be ready to cook them. So it's only a matter of doing this in and around other jobs that you're doing. Obviously we're fishing, so it's not really that bad to be doing this in and around our fishing antics. Right, let's get some hot water on and get this warming up. Okay, this has been sat for a good hour and a half now. As you can see, it's really risen, ready to be cooked. So now it's just a question of getting our frying pan hot, our rings oiled, get them crumpets cooking. First thing is going to put some oil in the bottom of the pan. Get that hot. You don't want it really smoking.
them, okay.
Just going to put some oil on the kitchen roll. Just rub the inside of them so they don't stick. Just put them in the pan. These are just ordinary stainless steel ring. Use for anything really. Just need to get that pan hot now. Okay, just going to spoon some of the mixture in.
There's an open water one at the bottom with the one at that kind of bottom. I like the one up until the bottom one. Open water, yeah. I had a chat with them before. I don't know. Well, you always have real lucky ones before.
There we go, just a waiting game. Just going to lid that off to keep the heat in. A couple minutes and then flip them over. Okay. We've been cooking for a few minutes. We're just going to lift the rings off. And now flip them over. Leave them for a couple more minutes to brown off now. We're just going to lift these out now. They're tapping the bottom. They sound hollow, just like a loaf of bread if you were cooking it. You'd look for that hollow sound. I'm going to flick these back over. As you can see, they're nicely golden. I'm going to lift these onto a plate and we're going to serve them. Got some Somerset butter, got some of our homemade raspberry jam that we make from our shop. Let's get it served. Here we go. Homemade crumpets by the bank, lashings of butter, homemade raspberry jam. What could be better on a cold day?
Well, the light's going on what's been a pretty miserable day. There's been one fish out of the lake today, sadly not to our rods. Let's pray we have one in the night. Let's also pray this rain stops. It's horrid. Well, after a really quiet night, we were having a bit of a lie-in. I've been rudely awakened, and Marco's got one on.
Already. Quite long now. Yes! First fish of the year. Well, this was a very welcome screamer this morning. The rods have been so quiet all weekend. We've slept right through the night. Now this one. Steve tied me a chod yesterday with pink nuts on. £20 8. Such a welcome fish. My first one of this year.
want to go. Nice one, sweetheart. Well, after all the rain, this morning is absolutely gorgeous. Isn't it funny how one fish puts a completely different complexion on the day? Well, as you saw, Margot had a fish this morning on the naked chod, or my version of the naked chod. Not mine, I've copied it from a magazine. But I've always been worried about that swivel on the main line. I've always been worried it's going to break the main line. So what I've done, I've just tied up a little short leader with a piece of unleaded, solar unleaded, spliced both ends so there's no real knots, and the lead's on one end, little short piece of silicone tube with the bottom bead sitting on that. That gives you a little piece of cushion when you're playing a fish. The top bead, as normal, I use the Avid ones, they're nice and heavy. When you cast, as normal with the chod, flies up to the top bead, so you're fishing naked chod with no leader showing. When you play the fish, it all comes down to the bottom bead, and you're actually playing the fish then with a swivel on a little piece of tough material on that piece of leader. Certainly worked this morning, and as you can see, that's a proper choddy. It's a 16mm popper, a pink nuts popper from Mad, and a size 4 Gardner chodder. Proper fishing. Well, we've come to the end of another 48-hour session. Not a complete waste of time, even though the conditions were horrible. Margot's managed to fish. A nice 20 at that. That's it. Cooking and carping on Meadow Lake. See you next time.